There's currently a divide in the solo leveling community where some are very happy with this episode and some are a little bit disappointed. And so let's get into that before I get into anything else. This entire segment here is Jin Woo and Goto facing off and getting to kind of see what level Jin Woo is currently at. For instance, if he is, S rank, like a high tier S rank, low tier S rank, mid tier S rank, where does he technically stack up on the totem pole? And it's very clear from, this fight that Jin Woo is probably one of the strongest S classes maybe in the world, and definitely the strongest potentially in this entire room. Now, could he theoretically take on all the S classes on his own at this point in time? Maybe not, but the point of the matter is that we gotta factor in that this entire fight with Goto is literally Jinwoo not even using his abilities. He's just using himself, he's just using his speed, he doesn't even use his shadows, his army that he has under his command. And so the fact that he's able to do something like this to Goto in this episode showcases just the complete, gap between the overall strength between him and other S-class hunters. But let's get into the main thing that's causing some controversy for this episode, and that is the fact that Goto, there is a scene with him that is completely cut in this episode, and honestly, it's a good thing. I'm just going to straight up say it. Now, it isn't cut because of censorship or anything like that, don't worry. I'm not trying to be a hypocrite or anything, but the reason why it was cut is because it was content that was not necessarily in the novel, but it was in the webcomic. And for those that are kind of unaware, basically, the original source of solo leveling is where it came from a novel, an actual written novel, like a book, and then it was adapted into a webcomic, which most people got into solo leveling through the webcomic because of the beautiful art. And then the anime came along and is now adapting mostly from the webcomic, but sometimes from the novel. And so basically, there was a scene in this fight, once this fight basically came to a close, to where Goto, he has a look of absolute dread and fear on his face. And I'm not going to give more context on what obviously was skipped, but what it basically indicated was that Goto wasn't this, very strong or someone that, was, on Jin Woo's level. He wasn't someone that could rival him. I mean, obviously, anime-onlys watching this fight could definitely indicate that Jin Woo is definitely above this man. There's just no chance. It's very obvious that he would not be able to win against this man. But the point of the matter is that, the episode tries to make it seem more or less like Goto isn't, weak. He has a very strong stoic expression. He's certain of himself. There's some pride within his abilities. And so this panel was completely cut, which basically showcased that he, buckles and bends in the face of, fear and someone a lot stronger than him. And this is the emotion he felt in the face he showed to Jin Woo, when he realized that there was a gap between them. This scene was completely cut. And before you assume that basically this is going to be added in maybe into the next episode or the episode after that, that is not the case whatsoever. The reason for it is because this was apparently a webcomic original scene, was not in the actual novel. And all this did was really kind of damage Goto's character and make him seem more or less like he didn't really have that pride or arrogance within his own abilities. So, honestly, this change is legitimately, I think, a good change because it allows this air of, mystery around Goto. Even though it's very obvious he's not as strong as Jin Woo, he still wasn't sweating and crying and obviously pretty much pissing himself in this episode. He just took it with grace, so to speak. And I think that is a really nice way the anime depicts him as a character within this episode. So we need to talk about the side plot, the side conflict that's been built up basically since the first episode of Solo Leveling. Now, as we know, last week's episode settled the main plot, for instance, Jin Woo saving his mother, healing her, and him being able to finally have his family whole once again. But the side plot that's been also built up around the exact amount of time as the mother plot is the island raid. For instance, the ants on the island mutating, evolving, and causing a threat to the world. It was an S-rank dungeon break, and obviously there's been multiple attempts to being able to rid the island of the monsters, the ants, but it's been nothing but failure, and basically, this is another raid on that long list of failures that's being set up to be able to finish unfinished business, so to speak. And it's been built up for a very long time, all coming to this very point, because it is our first real look at a S-rank dungeon. Which, to be fair, we could assume that the dungeon that Jin Woo was in, for instance, the Demon Tower, we could assume that most likely was an S-rank as well, or close to it. But even still, this is going to be our first true look of seeing, like, S-classes on the global scale fighting against creatures and stuff, and seeing how they stack up, not just to other S ranks, but also to Jin Woo and how he fares against them as well, and does he outshine them. But, the point of the matter is that the arc is obviously inspired by the Chimera Ant arc. I think anyone with a functioning brain, okay? If you have heard of Hunter x Hunter, you've heard of the Chimera Ant arc, you're gonna instantly draw the connection with this episode, with the ants appearing. Like, anyone's going to actually, realize that. They're gonna think about it, because it's like, we have seen this before. I've been here and I've seen this before, and I think everybody has seen this before, where you have an ant queen. She gets really smart and intelligent. She wants to further her, her dynasty, so to speak, and she has a child that's incredibly powerful, and this incredibly powerful child is basically very humanoid and more or less a monster that is evolving. And that's what this episode does. It, introduces this creature that is very Meruem inspired, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with Solo Leveling obviously taking inspiration from Hunter x Hunter, because, let's be honest, Hunter x Hunter is an incredible manga, it's an incredible anime, and I think seeing series inspired by that is a good thing. It is a nice thing to see, because there is worse things to be inspired from, so the fact that, the author of Solo Leveling was inspired by Hunter x Hunter of all things is pretty good. Now, will this arc reach the same heights and depth of, the Chimera Ant arc? We will have to see. But the point of the matter is that there is definitely a similarity there, and I think everybody's instantly going to see it, especially with this episode, with this supposed ant son that is incredibly powerful. The question is, how powerful is he really? I mean, the cliffhanger we got is some pretty wild stuff, honestly. I'm going to be blunt, man. I'm going to be completely blunt. These cliffhangers are painful. They are actually freaking painful. Probably some of the most painful cliffhangers I have had to experience as an anime watcher in a good long while. I dare say the cliffhangers might be worse than ReZero's cliffhangers. ReZero has some pretty bad cliffhangers, but these, it's pretty bad, man. It's just so sudden, because you're sitting down, you're watching the episode, and it feels like it's only 5 minutes, and then it comes to a close, you're like, where'd the episode go? You're just like, what happened? But, anyways, this episode is legitimately enjoyable for a variety of reasons. Obviously, finally getting into the side plot of the story. This obviously will make those that only like action and aura farming very happy. They definitely won't probably downvote this episode and make it become the most disliked episode of Solo Leveling. Actually, there is 1,000 dislikes on this. Oh. Anyways, what I will say is that we will see. But actually, now that I think about it, this episode didn't have a lot of action, not enough action. It wasn't 20 minutes of nothing but action, so maybe that's why it's got the dislikes. But jokes aside, I do like the setup that Jinwoo is not going to be at the island raid, actually. I've neglected to mention that, but basically, it is stated that he's not going to be participating because he's wanting to focus on his family. I mean, he's gotten his family together, he's spent all this time trying to get stronger just to be able to save his mother, and he's accomplished what he wants. He's satisfied. He doesn't need to fight no more. He's not driven by desire of getting stronger now because he got what he wanted. So I think that it's interesting just seeing that he might even be taking a step back and not even participating in this arc and allowing other characters to breathe and develop, so to speak. But I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for watching. May all of you have a fantastic day or night wherever you live. Chibi out.